So I think just to kind of recap some stuff from earlier in the week. First things first, like I'm still getting a lot of people coming back mentioning kind of this definition, this syntax, this YAML that I'm going to use. So right now, it's just a little bit invalid, basically because of these shorthands. Again, these might end up going away. Some other people are also talking about paring this down, where like you generate things based on the object. So you would say something more like post, and then you would have like underneath post, you would have models and a controller. I definitely see why people are suggesting that, but I think that actually doesn't give you as much flexibility because you wouldn't be able to generate a controller that's maybe not based on a model. And I know that being opinionated, like I would want to always have a model be generated and a controller and so forth. Just kind of the whole cruddy bit in MVC. Like I don't want to lock that use case down. So I think it could be pretty verbose if we made the object like the top level thing. So just for like 100% clarity, let me just bring up this sample, and like what people are recommending is maybe more of a format like this, where I would say model and then controller, and I would cut this out, and this would end up being underneath this post. So again, I definitely understand why, and I'm not saying I necessarily dislike the structure. I just think it hurts flexibility just a little bit. So it's not something I think I'll do. Another reason, and I know we haven't demonstrated this yet, but one of the powerful things about Blueprint that I want to make is for it to have memory. And what I mean by that is once you define this post, like you're not going to continue to use this same YAML file. Like this isn't going to be a huge YAML file of your whole project definition like over its lifespan. Like these little blueprint files that you're going to make, this little YAML file that you're going to make is like a scratch file. Like you're going to be throwing stuff around here all the time. And so like let's say I make some kind of like comment controller and I still want to query all posts. It's going to know, like Blueprint's going to know from this like .blueprint file or from your migrations potentially, like how to go and reference that post correctly. So again, I know right now it might seem a little fresh because we're kind of defining everything in this sample, but again, as you kind of use this on a hopefully a daily basis or a weekly basis, or use this within your project, it's not something where this YAML file is going to be a constant, complete definition of everything you've ever generated. Like, again, it's going to be used in a very like scratch pad capacity where like you just generate whatever you want to generate real quick and it's kind of throwaway. Like it's just going to generate the code and from there you use the code. Like this is a passive code generator, meaning that it's not going to keep track of every single change. It's just to give you a jump start on these components. So with that said, hopefully we can we can kind of put to bed some of these changes in the structure because I feel pretty good about this top level structure. Now, with that said, if people have ideas and want to focus on like what goes in here or like how to craft these pieces, or once we get to them like other controller actions that would be really cool and helpful, absolutely, please recommend those. But for now, let's lock in the structure until we see a need, like a real need to change it. Because I feel like the suggestions we've gotten here are pretty good. So let's ride this for a little bit instead of like changing it every video. All right, looks like we've got several people shown up now. So let's get into the code. Hey, howdy, Vince. How's it going? Cool. Okay, so first of all, let me demonstrate the tests. So I basically took this blueprint, and obviously we can see that it looks a lot more object-oriented now. So let me also start off by saying that I'm not at all happy with this naming or even the static nature of these. So this is all subject to change. But the point is I'm starting to drive out this source directory instead of just everything being this little spike script. So I am keeping this blueprint PHP just for now. This may turn into some kind of bin file later, kind of like PHP units runner, like test runner. And so to that point, let's talk about the tests. So I backfilled these in a very Laravel fashion. In fact, I copied most of the PHP unit XML because I do think there's going to be this concept of like feature and unit tests. So I pretty much just copied all that, held on to the appenv stuff, even though I'm not really using that just yet. And then all the basic, definitions here. This part was generated by PHP unit itself. So let me just run this to demonstrate. You can already see that it's all good. And so what I did was I started to break out this parser. And what I did with this parser was a very like integration style test. So let's bring up the parser and I'll split that and let's look at this together. So basically I just have these different methods for it to parse like a model's definition very specifically, it to parse controllers, it parses the shorthands, for example. So I give it like a shorthands.bp, a .blueprint file from one of the fixtures. So we can just open that up. Let's look up shorthands. So this is just a very simple YAML structure where I demonstrate that it's able to run those shorthands and have them be output as what we would expect. So ID and timestamp. And this is all the parser does. Really, the parser, honestly, eventually might just be YAML if we get rid of some of these shorthands, but this is all that's happening. Everything we saw before, I just drove this out by writing this test first, and then I basically copied some of that spike code from the blueprint.php file into its future home now of this parse. And because there's no state, I'm just keeping it a static class for now. So again, if I start to track state or there's more pre-processing or something like that, I may change this. But without any state, I feel like, who cares? It's not a big deal. And again, I'm not a huge fan of this parser parse and this lexer lex kind of stuff, but like I may end up turning this into some kind of like blueprint top level class where I parse and lex those things there. It just kind of depends on how much more gets added to these files. So to that point, everything runs. We're going to start to try to test drive some of this stuff out as we get deeper into the code. But there's still a little bit more for me to backfill today and spike out, so I think that's what we're going to work on. Let's look at this Lexer real quick. Pretty much what we saw before. I just built a registry. So we can think of this Lexer kind of like a tokenizer, but a little bit more. There's probably eventually going to be some validation in here to make sure that you're not doing certain things. And in fact, I'll probably even make some sub-Lexers. So we'll see that today. So there's kind of like a top-level blueprint Lexer, and then that's going to be smart enough to know, okay, Lex these models, Lex these controllers. And maybe as an open source project, the reason I like this being broken out that way, whereas normally I would probably call Yagni, is because I feel like that would make it really extendable. So like if someone wanted to generate more things and add more stuff to Blueprint, like this, let's bring up this sample bit. So let's say someone wanted to add, I don't know, like a commands, right? And now they want to have, something else you can do to generate commands. Like having these multiple lexers where you could register your own lexer would be pretty helpful. So for now, they'll just be for each loops, but I could definitely see like by version 1, having this be extendable by making these lexer subclasses that you can then register to this blueprint lexer, and it knows to basically take what it's parsed and pass it to each one of those registered lexers to be able to do things with it. So pretty cool, just future ideas here. Again, for today, I'm going to kind of call Yagni on that, but that's why these to-do notes kind of exist. So that's really the rough plan there. Okay, cool. So a few comments. So yeah, I definitely appreciate again that people kind of like the top level class, but I think it's limiting, so I'm probably not going to do that. And I think once we get a little farther in seeing how this runs, it's going to be one of those things where I think you see a little bit more why. Okay, so what I want to do today is work on these kind of to-dos that are here. And I think the thing I want to focus on is back in this sample YAML XML, we saw this thing where like timestamps technically needs to be like created at, and this is some kind of timestamp, and I think they're nullable. I don't really know. And then there's updated at. So we need to kind of like break these up. This timestamps thing, we need to kind of expand these into like the real things that they're supposed to be. So let's kind of focus on that today and kind of breaking this out more. And then if I have enough time, if we're under like the 40-minute mark, I'll try to work on actually generating some code. And if not, we'll pick that up tomorrow. Because I think once we get into the code generation, it's honestly it's pretty downhill from there as far as the models are concerned. I think the controllers with some of these commands are going to be much more involved. So, but I think for the models, they're pretty straightforward, which is why I wanted to start here anyways. So let's cut these out and let's kind of push the limits of this Elixir a little bit. And I'm just going to spike on this for now because I don't really know what the final format of this is. I'm not sure if it's an integration test or if we do Elixir and these things get injected and then we have that registry. Again, I'm not too sure what all that looks like yet. So I just want to keep spiking on this before we kind of switch gears to TDD. So all this live streaming definitely like catches up with you as far as your you got to stay hydrated. All right, so anyways, let's see here. Where did we leave off? Okay, so we have this model factory and it creates a definition. So let's keep this model factory going for now. But I think the issue here is that this for each loop, it's not always a one-to-one ratio, meaning that, for example, timestamps needs to get broken out into these two other things. So there's a couple different ways I could do this. I think one of the ways would be to have the parser, let's go back to it. The parser could actually do a better job of pre-processing these into multiple. That would be something, maybe. I don't really like that personally, just because now we're really stuck with these pre-processing bits. And I feel like if I want this to ultimately be like completely valid YAML, I'm probably going to get rid of these pre-processing things anyways. So I think to put it here might not be the best choice. I think that's probably the simplest choice, but I don't think it's best because, again, we may actually just like default it to be more like this. Again, it's all about developer experience, to be super quick and expressive. So, honestly, I'm leaning towards dropping these and just having them be default to be the ID and timestamps, and you actually have to turn them off or change them otherwise. So you would have something like, other ID or something, and this would be like your ID field. But you're giving it a different name, for example, or you're saying like timestamps false, like this particular model, I don't want timestamps. So I think I'm leaning towards that anyway. So for those reasons, I think putting it in the parser doesn't make a lot of sense. So it's just some talking out loud. So let's keep it down here in this create method. And I think what I want to do is say something like, let's do this. Let's say that we'll just do an if statement for now. So let's just say something like if the definition, so we have columns. Okay, so let's say if columns ID is set, right? So if it's not set, or the columns, so we know that it is set, and then it's set to just be whatever we shorthanded it to, then we know that we're going to kind of immediately make a column for this ID field, right? So we're just going to say something like column make, and we'll just kind of pass in our own definition here. And so let's take a look at what Laravel uses underneath the covers. So let's do Laravel migrations, and I think it's a big integer. I'm not positive. Let's find out. Big increments. There we go. ID. Cool. So this is going to be a big increments. And we haven't really decided, but like, am I going to do like another colon syntax here for like ID? I'm not too sure. I think if we come across a big increments, it just knows that it's an ID. So we can set that up again in the formatter. So there we go. So there is a column, and let's add it. And we're probably going to need to go so far as to like unset this ID bit in a way. Let's leave that and see what happens. All right, let's do the same thing for timestamps. And we'll say if it's not set, timestamps, if it's not set, so if timestamps is not set, or same thing, it's set to just itself, somebody leveraged the shorthand and was explicit, then we're going to actually want to make two columns. And again, let's see what Laravel makes out of these. I think, where is it? Timestamps. There we go. Adds a created at, updated at timestamp equivalent. So let's see if there's like, is there shorthand for created at? No. So what does this really do? It's an alias. It doesn't say that they're nullable. Let's actually just jump out to a Laravel project real quick. I just want to click through and see what these actually look like. I think it's easier than looking at the docs. I know the user table will have it. There's timestamps. They are nullable. There we go. Precision 0. Well, actually, you know what? The very interesting thing is, I could leave this alone and Laravel will actually do the right thing. That's interesting. So, sorry. So what I'm saying here is that I actually probably don't need to adjust this. If it's not set or timestamps is equals to timestamps, I could actually leave this alone, I guess is what I'm saying. Meaning that if I just leave this as timestamps, it's all just going to work underneath the covers. So let's do this. Let's say if timestamps isn't set, I'm going to add that, and I want to do that very systematically, like at the bottom of this. So that's actually just going to work. If you do this shorthand timestamps, then again, it's just going to work too. We'll know kind of on the generation of it not to, call it timestamps. So again, that's all just going to work. Same thing here. I don't think I need to do this colon bit because I'm going to have the name right here already built in. So that's all fine. And then this timestamp things will know just not to use the name when it encounters this data type. So I think the thing I would want to support now is if there is no timestamps, I would want to unset it. So let's do that. So let's say if I want to know, so if timestamps is set, right? So if it is set, whoops. If timestamps is set, timestamps, and it's equal to false. So column timestamps is whoa, false. Then I would actually want to unset columns timestamp. Okay, so what this is going to do is that if you actually, it's going to support basically this is hopefully what it's going to do now. All right, so in fact, okay, so now that I think we have enough of a spike here, let's kind of see this in action. So let's run blueprint again. So PHP blueprint. Okay, so we have published at, content, title. We have this ID. It's a string ID. So it's still getting ID. Oh, here's big increments. Post, post. Okay, so that's a little bit wrong. Let's go back and take a look at this. Okay, so it doesn't know the name. So this is the name of the model, so that's messed up. So let's change that to ID. And the other thing now is we would want to unset this, I think, because we've already kind of put that in there. So let's say ID. So I'm seeing the duplicate here is that this ID is kind of coming across twice. So we see it's big increments, but it's using post because the model name's out of scope. And then we're seeing that ID is actually in here twice. So that'll take care of that. And then timestamps actually looks good, minus the fact that it didn't add anything. So if timestamps is set and it's false, then unset the timestamps column. And then if timestamps is not set, okay, so let's run this again. And we should not see the ID anymore, or we should see that it's big increments. ID, good. And we're not seeing the timestamps. So let's take a look at something else here. Let's just bring open that little sample file one more time. And let's drop this and this just to kind of see that everything's still behaving the way we think. Okay, so I see ID, and I see title, and content, and published at. I don't see timestamps in here. I see published at being timestamps. That's strange. So let's go check that out. I think it's just a scope issue again. Yeah, we used name here, so this needs to be timestamps. There we go. So published at, timestamp, timestamps are timestamps. Okay, cool. I think this is pretty good. Let's make sure we didn't break any of our existing tests, which we didn't because those are just parsers. I don't have tests for the Elixir just yet. But I think this is working out. So what we've actually done here is we've demonstrated that you can use the shorthands, but now we've actually gotten back to also supporting valid YAML. And I think that's a big win for today. So let's just look at this online YAML parser. The best online one ever, yay. Paste it. Let's get rid of these commands. Validate. Look at that, we're valid YAML. Sweet, okay, cool. So we support both, but we can also support none. Cool. All right, let me check the comments here. Most of this is new and not in the repo. Yes, you're right. It is not in the repo just yet. Once I get a little more testing, I will. I think the parser's up there. Maybe make column make to only create the method call without string naming if there is only one param. Maybe adjust the column make. Let's see what you're talking about here. So adjust the column make. So column make, what's the issue? Maybe adjust column make to only create the method call without string naming if there's only one param. I'm not sure what you mean by that, Vince. So it works now for soft deletes other methods that don't take a string parameter. Yeah, Vince, sorry, buddy. Not sure what you're saying by those last two. So feel free to tighten up the message. Okay. I think this is good enough. Like I said, I'm going to backfill some tests for this. I'll check the comments on more suggestions. But let's go back to Blueprint now. We have this registry. What I think would be kind of cool now is maybe do like some kind of like migration generator or something, or like generator, you know, migrations. I don't know. Let's just toy around with this for a second. Let's just see how far we get. And let's just call this Blueprint. Let's just stick with the same kind of admittedly naming convention. Generator. And then we'll generate migrations. So let's make this, whoops. Let's create this class. Oh, PHP Storm, I love you. Blueprint. This is Blueprint and then generators. What's funny is it actually had that right just for a second. There we go. Let's see how this does. Oh, does it have to be that? Hey, cool. There we go. Finally got it to work a little bit. All right, cool. And now let's just make this. It's just a static function. It takes a registry. Obviously, we would only care about the models within it. So This is going to look, I think, initially like really, really close to just this for each bit here. So let's do this. Let's change this. We're going to print R that. And let's turn this into, now we have this registry for each models. So we can say something like for each registry models. And again, this registry might end up being an object onto itself. So something that's a little easier to get at. And now we should be able to say something like model columns. And I think this is the name of the column. And then it's not really the definition, it's kind of like the column itself. Okay. Okay, and so now let's just do this. Let's echo name, and let's also echo, I don't know, let's do like let's just do a real simple echo here. Let's just say generating migration definition for that. Let's just see how we get here. Oh, didn't spell that right. Generating. All right, cool. Let's see what this does. Blows up. Okay, so what's wrong with columns on array? So model columns, what is that returning? Model, it returns nothing, that's why. So let's return, whoops, this columns. All right, call to undefined member function columns on array. Why are you still an array? Oh, I'm not looping. Helps when you loop. Or well, that probably worked out because it was just a one-liner. What is model? Let's find out. Print R model. Yeah, it should be everything we need. It's a model object. Is columns private or something? No. No, am I not adding to it? Seems good. What's wrong with you? Am I reading this wrong? Columns on array, line 12. Yeah, it doesn't like that. What is wrong with you? Call to a member function, columns on array. Models as model. Is that just not coming back the way we think? Let's take a look at this. Property, or no, let's print R on registry. Let's run this again. Okay, I see. This post, that's some kind of subarray. That's interesting. Let's go back to the Elixir. This is why you have tests. Oh, there we go. I subarrayed it. Haha, there we are. All right, cool. Let's get rid of all this output junk. And again, I'll make sure to go back and add some tests for that later. So let's get down to migrations. We don't need that printer anymore. There we are. Okay, so generating for ID, title, published at, timestamps. Okay, cool. So now what I want to do is, this isn't going to be like super pretty right now. I'm not super worried about that. Let's just say, let's just go back to generating this as we would with like Laravel. So this is just a table. It's going to be the data type. It's going to have the ID or the name of whatever the column is inside of there. And then we're going to add some attributes. So let's just kind of start on this for now. I'm not going to worry about like putting this in a file or anything just yet. That's super easy to do later. Let's just kind of focus on getting this all added here. So let's call this name. And this is going to be, whoops. This is going to be what? This will be the column. What do we have here? Let's open column. Column has what? Yeah, see, this all needs to go to the Elixir too. So it has a name, it has a data type. There we go, that's what I want. So let's get the data type tile. I did that again, look at that. I have no idea why I'm doing that. And let's just do the same thing here and get that. And that way I don't even need to know explicit things about those columns. And now let's get rid of this. And we'll just EOL that. So let's kind of see what happens with this. And I'm assuming those will blow up. Yes, good. Okay, let's add a comment for this and call it a column. And let's just say blueprint column. Did I still call that capital P? I thought I changed that. I did. There we go. All right. Now, why are you being a little jerk? Does it have to be in here? I guess it does. It's kind of annoying. Let's add the method. This will return this data type. Hey, look at that. All right, so we got table, big increments. It's using the ID, table timestamps, and we don't need to do that. So there's going to be a little bit of a logic that needs to happen here. So let's just go ahead and wrap that up. So let's say something like, we can say something like name is going to be equal to some kind of quoted value. So we can say something like, what is this? We can say column name. And I might want to move this logic into name, but for now I'm just going to do this since there's just one. I'm going to drive all this out later. But let's just do something real simple here, and we'll just say something like, this is going to end up being the column name. Otherwise, it's just going to be nothing. Cool. And now what we can do is change this to be a little cleaner and just be name. And I'll probably interpolate this as a string here in just a bit anyways. So let's see what that looks like. Whoops. Oh yeah, 2 question marks doesn't work. All right, cool. So I think I have that backwards. If it's not equal to timestamp, there we go. Okay, cool. So now we just have those timestamps. This is just a timestamp of published at and string, all that stuff. So that's looking pretty good. I think some comments are coming across. Let's check it out. Okay, so Vince, back to what you were saying. Column make first name string would work, and column make, it's okay, I'll keep watching. This is what I was mentioning. Okay, cool. I'll come back to what you have later. I think I get what you're saying is like this column make thing could be a little more flexible and maybe like passing in certain things. I'm probably not going to keep this stuff here, so when I go to refactor that, I think there'll be an opportunity to talk about that a little more. I think this is good. Let's try to keep hacking here just for a minute, and like I said, I'll backfill all these tests, you know, once we prove this, and hopefully by the time we get to parsing out the controller, we'll do some more TDD with it. But I think for now, for these live streams, the spiking and kind of the interaction and suggestions that are being made are kind of more valuable than getting stuck on like testing something. So let's see if we can add some attributes now. Let's just kind of see what this would look like. So let's just say something like if, I don't even think we need an if, let's just do a for each, again, real naive, column attributes, and this will be as attribute. And let's just echo out for now, just real kind of ugly. We'll just echo out like this additional stuff here. So let me just steal this, put that there. Let's throw this down here. We'll echo that out. And here we'll just echo out this attribute. And let's just kind of see like how far off we are. All right, cool. Attributes is not real. Or no, it is. Call to undefined method attributes. No, it's not. Why are you not real? And also, more importantly, why am I not getting the auto completion? Does this have to be like, it's very strange. I don't know why, like, I've been a big fan of PHP Storm, but I don't know if it's just this latest version or what, but I feel like I lost a lot of auto completion like that. Just a minute ago, we were able to auto-generate this. Like, why is an attribute showing up? Like, is this some kind of reserved word I'm just missing? I don't even know. Public function attributes, and then let's just return this attributes. Cool. All right, let's see if that works out better. Yeah, see it immediately. Okay, so now we have this nullable. Awesome. And let's just change this to that. Whoops. Okay, cool. So the attributes, and this is super naive. Obviously, that's not going to work for everything. So just as kind of like a demonstration here, like let's just throw on something else. Let's throw on like total or something, or like comment count, or just something a little weird. And we can say like integer unsigned default like 0. So obviously we see now that like some things are messing up. Also what's interesting is this default is not coming across anymore. I wonder where that's landing. Let's go take a look at that. Yeah, so we have this special type. So I don't think we have to handle the special type of ID anymore, or do we? Yes, we do. We don't need to do that anymore. This should be like big increments. There we go. So we're still going to do that. What I'm interested in though is why didn't our default come across? So let's just print our definition here. We're going to get a lot of these, but let's just see what it looks like. It came across. Why isn't it getting exploded into pieces? There it is. Oh, it's not a modifier. So it is, but it's not in its colon syntax. Okay. So I think that's another area that's probably going to need some more finesse, and I'm not going to worry about live streaming that. I'll work on that when I test drive this out. So the point is that this is actually working pretty nicely. What would be really cool though is like, first of all, if these get like sorted correctly, that would be nice. I'm probably not going to worry about that for V1, but I think what would be even cooler though is if this knew that if it had a qualifier of unsigned to make this like its data type like unsigned integer. I think that would be pretty cool if the formatter knew to kind of pack those together. So that could be kind of fun. So again, I'll test drive some of those nuances out. I think we've spiked enough today to demonstrate like this works. So here it is. This is Blueprint. We're taking definitions. We're being super shorthand. I mean, I think if I were going to generate a migration or even just a model, this is already like super helpful in my opinion, than having to like run artisan make on the model, the name, it generates a migration. I go in their migration, I type all this stuff. I mean, don't get me wrong, the auto completion would be super nice, but who's to say that someone won't make some kind of like, if this becomes popular, you know, I've seen like for Tailwind, for example, a lot of people made like, you know, editor plugins that like give you completion here. So like, I think this would be a lot faster if I were able to do that, especially on a grander scale. And plus, we're going to get so much more than just the migrations. So if it's already a wash, anything else we're going to get, like once we start to get down in these controllers, is going to be that much more powerful. So hopefully you guys are seeing the excitement for all this. So I think it's pretty cool. Okay, so I think I'm going to stop there. We're right at the 40 minutes. I'm going to backfill the tests for this tonight. For the kind of Elixir and move these columns and bits out. I'll try to do some of the condensing for these suggestions where like unsigned integer is smarter and like maybe nullable timestamp is smarter. So like there's all sorts of really cool things in here, tiny increments, unsigned big integer. So like maybe taking, you know, obviously if someone typed that here and just did like an unsigned, you know, integer, like of course they're welcome to do that themselves, but it would be nice for it to be able to determine you know, what these are. And actually just kind of thinking off the top of my head, like what would be even cooler is like if I could still continue to do shorthands like total, and total knew to be like you know, a decimal of you know, precision of like, you know, 10 and 2 and you know, things like that. It was nullable or something, or its default was, you know, 0.00. Like if this that's why I want to keep these shorthands around. I hate that it breaks the YAML, but like I think I could definitely see a bank, and again, these are all things that make Blueprint faster than using these other stuff. Like we can make it super super smart as an open source project where like it knows to pull all these things. And we haven't even talked about all the test generation I want to do. Like this is going to generate a factory with all the right faker data. I mean, there's just so much that's going to happen off of this. So you can tell I'm getting a little excited by just starting to see some of this code generation. But hopefully you are too. So like I said, I'm going to leave it there today. Upbeat note, looking pretty good. We're going to add some more tests, or I'll add some more tests tonight. Probably one more real quick live stream tomorrow. Since it's Friday, I probably won't get too deep into it. I'll probably just recap the tests that I wrote and maybe hopefully like demonstrate it generating the actual migration and maybe even the model. So thank you all. I'll review the questions. Feel free to hit me up on Twitter. Keep the conversation going. I'm just making this one huge thread on Twitter, so just keep adding your notes there. Keep DMing me. I've really appreciated all the feedback. The hype is real. So thank you all, and see you tomorrow.